Rear brake. Now then, we have a slight problem here because we want the brake pedal on this side, but the brake is on the other side. So, first thing I did was I used a cable. Cable came from here, went across, down the swinging arm to the other side. And what I found there was, if I used a flexible enough cable to make all these bends and it work alright, the cable was flexing a bit. I didn't have a good feel for the back brake. I tried it with a heavier cable and it was really tough to pull because obviously the heavier the cable, the less it likes to go around bends. So I thought to myself, what I would really like is to have a pedal on this side and the arm on the other side with a cross shaft. So I began to think about this, all sorts of complicated systems, and then it suddenly struck me that this is hollow. So it's a perfect place to put a shaft right across the other side of the engine. So what I made was a pedal here, shaft that goes through the other end, and then put an arm on and a brake rod. And it worked very nicely. I've got a slight problem. It's not absolutely perfect because, as you can see, our pivot point, it would be nice if we had, as always, the pivot point behind. So it's a relatively short lever and it doesn't give us the perfect mechanical advantage to get to the back wheel. But it works nicely. I've been riding like this for about 3 years, I guess, since I did it. And certainly you can lock the back wheel up without any problem, so I'm happy with it. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to make a pedal on a shaft and a lever on the other side. So let me zoom in because that plan presents us with one particular problem. So here we are over the other side. You can see we've got our shaft. This is a 1/2 inch hole through here. So I'm using a piece of 1/2 inch stainless tube. So the problem is that the other end of the shaft has got the brake pedal welded onto it. So whatever we put on this end has got to be detachable because it's got to be able to come off so we can pull the rod out from the other side, or the tube out from the other side. So the perfect thing would be for this to be splined, external splines, and then have a lever with internal splines. But of course, the idea of the whole of this thing is we're building it up for the average fella like me. Now, I've got a mill now, so I could do it, but even I think at the time when I first came up with this idea, I didn't. So I was thinking to myself, oh, what I need, I suppose I could put the lever on and drill through and put a pin in it, but I really wanted it to be adjustable. So I was trying to think of something I could get that was sort of ready splined. And just as with the little blinding flash of realization that this thing was hollow, it suddenly struck me that a 12-point ring spanner was almost the equivalent of very large splines, and it fitted onto a nut, and it could be moved around the nut to different places, or a bolt as the case may be. So what I did was I welded a bolt in whose head was less than a 1/2 inch, would go through, and then I got a spanner, cut it down and drilled it for the rod to go in, and there it was. Worked perfectly. So that's the plan we're going to follow. So what we're going to do first of all is weld this in here. Then, well, we're going to drill the center and tap it because this will go up against there like that, and then we'll have a washer and a small bolt in there to hold it, and there's our lever. Cut this down and drill it. Then when we've got this end done, so we know we're right, we can cut the tube to length and weld our brake lever on the other side. So that's the design. We'll get this welded into there. We're going to have to slim this down slightly because it's a little thick. When that's flush at the back, we wouldn't be able to get our bolt on properly. So I'm just going to mill it off very slightly, and that will work. Then we're going to make a rod up to go back to here. I think we're going to be, as I was mentioning, the mechanical advantage the other side. Again, we're all compromises. We would like the lever to be long, so that for a relatively short pedal movement on that side, if it only goes through a few degrees, it's actually going to go through a great longitudinal distance. But of course that's going to be up here, so we're restricted in the length of what we can have. I'm thinking of, I have a friend who built a very nice Ducati. He built the frame and everything, and he's a machinist, and I noticed on his, on the arm here, he had the same problem, and what he had was a sort of half moon shaped piece, so that it was mounted up here, but it came down to there. Now I've sort of played around with this on bits of paper, and I'm pretty sure that when that moves, this moves the exact same amount, so we get the benefit of the long arm, but it's actually pulling down here. So we're going to do the brake pedal and all that, and then I'll decide, because I haven't had a chance to talk to him yet and I want to get this filmed, whether that will work. So let's get started putting our bolt in here. I've welded the bolt in, and I actually filled it in a little bit back and moved the flats back a little to get more of that on there. But of course, if you don't have a mill, then you can't do that. But that was the whole idea of using a bolt. I mean, I could have used a piece of solid rod, and I'll put a piece of solid rod into this, a plug of it, and milled 6 flats on it. But as I say, not everybody's got a mill, and just simply welding a bolt in there does the same. So because the bolt head is, well, the flats are slightly smaller than this 1/2 inch, we've got a nice stop for that. Make sure the end is completely flat. See, when it's in, we can take this off and move it round. That's the whole point. So anyway, that goes on there now. Then I've drilled and tapped the end. So we put a little bolt in to hold that on. Ran out of the right size washers, so we're using the wrong size one for this demonstration. Down at the hardware tomorrow. So we put that in like that. That holds that on there. Now let's move over to the bike. And this will go in there. We'll have our pedal on the other end of it, and as I say, the other end will be fixed. We're going to cut this to length and drill a hole for that. But there it is. You see, when, oh, can I reach right through? Where is it? Stay there. So when the pedal moves, that will move. Next stage for the rear brake cross shaft, we put the bolt in and drilled and tapped it so that this would go on and could be held on like that. So what I did when that was bolted on nicely was pushed it through and marked the other end, and then I was able to weld this to it. So this is going to go on the other side like that. There's actually the nut on the other side, and with that in there, this just sticks out nicely enough. So the next thing we're going to do is get this ready. Let me put this back through. Now you may remember I was talking about making little half moon shaped things and what have you. I did some playing around and made a couple of little mock-ups to see that I got the movement, but I decided in the end that see if I can get this on here. It pushes through, so it's a bit awkward. There we go. So as I say, that goes on. This is merely to stop it coming off. What I was worried about was I'm trying to get as long a rod here so that with the physics and the levers and all that that's involved, we can have a relatively small movement of the brake pedal and get quite a fair pull on this. And I was worried that if I made this longish, then when we put this in, I've got just a bit of cable here, as you can see, as the swinging arm came up, I was going to catch on this, so I was going to sort of try and do some clever stuff under there. But what I found actually is that with that like that, at the little point I'd marked there, I don't know, can see if you can see this, that can come up all the way to there before it would touch that, and that's gone up at the brake end by about 6 inches, 6-7 inches. So I don't think we're going to have that much suspension travel. So I'm okay. I'm going to drill it just there. The mark's coming off, I keep rubbing it. We're going to drill it there and we're going to cut it off up here. And then that'll be our lever for this side. So let's go and do that. I was talking to Charlie Prescott today, and we were talking about the gate scoring system. He's going to give it a try in the UK. I think you'll like it. So if any of you are watching this or in the area where Charlie is, get yourself out and ride this trail when he gets it set up. Okay, let's go and do some sawing. Now I've cut down the arm here, the lever, whatever you want to call it, and drill the hole in it. And if I walk around the other side, I can waggle it. So you see when we've got our pedal on the other side, boom, just works like that. And as I say, I want to reduce the actual degrees of movement, and that's why I've made the arm as long as I could. So just a few degrees on this side gives me an inch or so pull that side, which should be ample to get us from brake off to brake well and truly on. We're going to set it to start with about there, so it swings through that sort of arc. Now there's two ways, of course, you can connect that to the brake arm on the brake drum itself. You can do it with cable or with rod. We are actually going to use some nice shiny stainless steel rod, because apart from anything else I need to put a couple of tiny little bends in it to get it in there right, and that's why I've used some slightly thicker rod. I'm going to use 1/4 inch. If you look at most brake rods, they're thinner, they're 3/16, maybe even an 1/8, and of course if it's cable it's thin as well. But that's fine if you've got a nice straight pull, but we're actually going to have to go in and round. And if we used any thinner rod and put a bend in it, what tends to happen is when you put the tension on the rod, the bends open out a little bit. So, I mean, it's not a lot, but it makes the brake feel spongy because it can open up. Now, I'll mention cables just in case any of you want to do a cable at some time and make one up for a back brake. And this is the way I do it. You can buy these little things here to go onto there, and all I do there is just put one of the little nipples on, so that sticks there. It's the other end with a brake that's difficult, because you've got to have some form of adjustment. So what I do is I take a bolt, which depends on the size of cable you have. This is sort of ordinary brake cable size, so I use a 1/4 inch bolt. You drill through it so the cable will go through, and then you put another little nipple on the end, and you pop your that'll go through the thing in the brake. You put your nuts on, and you've got the adjustment at the other end. But as I say, we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to weld one of these on here for there, and then we're going to thread the other end, and I will make up a nice knurled adjuster out of aluminium for this end. So we'll set to now, get a rough length, have it sticking out at the break end, and then we will weld this on, make our couple of bends and see exactly where we want it at the break, and then we can cut it to the correct length and start to do the threading on the end. Actually, belay that, we'll do the threading on the end before we do anything else, for the simple reason that it's a lot easier to hold this in the lathe and use the tailstock to hold the die square. So we'll do it that way. I can make a pretty good guess at how long it needs to be. Okay, so if that's going to go to there, I will cut it off. Well, it wasn't going to go to there, was it? It was going to go to about there. Right. Very technical look. Where the thumb is. Okay, so I'm going to go and cut this, and then we'll move over and do some threading. I showed you before tapping a hole using the centre in here to go into the end of your tap. You can do exactly the same with a die. Take everything out so that the die holder goes up against the headstock, whatever they call it. I'm going to ask Dave. Must have a name, or somebody maybe could say. Anyway, you put your piece in the chuck, and now you see you're exactly square to that. And you get it started. Really, as with now, once I've got it started, we're okay. I'm going to go along a fair bit. But once we've done our bends and made all the rest of it, so I can't get it back in here, I can put this in the vise, and I know that I'm going to be, because I've already got maybe an inch of thread cut, I know I'm going to go on straight. But for this one, it's fine. You turn the chuck, and you wind your tailstock forward, and we keep everything nice and square. We've cut our thread, so what I'm going to do now is turn it round in the lathe and just turn this down so that it fits into that hole there. So that'll go in there, and then we can just, as with everything else, if you're welding, it's nice to have some in the hole, so we'll make that a good push, tight fit into that, and we can weld it actually on the inside and the outside. So let's slide that into there. Cold weather, remember that? Almost there, just a fraction more. Thing is here, actually they bent this after they drilled the hole, so it slightly distorted the hole, but we're very close. That I think we'll have to just tap on there. There it goes, nice and tight. Take it out and weld it up. Here I am in my nice new welding gloves. Spent some money at the weekend. I actually built this as well. I'll maybe zoom out and show you it. I was a bit shocked at the price of steel. I made the top out of 3/8. It's 4x2 and it was a lot of money. Alright. Forgetting it's TIG, I've got to put my foot on the pedal. Straight. That's nicely on there, so we'll let that cool down and then we'll go and fit it. Now I've put a slight twist in this to point it in, which means we don't have to have much in the way of bends in this. So that's going to go through there, like so. And that is going to go on there, like so. And we're pretty much tucked in. So there we go. So now let's make our little knurled adjuster for the end of there. So we're going to take 100 thou off this so it fits into the lever on the brake plate. Off. Set that to 0. 40 off. We can have a little bit faster feed than that. There we go. Now a little spring cut. And the next thing we're going to do is just a few thou off that to tidy it up. Then we'll nail this now, and then we'll drill it and tap it, and then we'll cut it off. Need a new nailing tool. That's quite nice. All right. I'll switch you off while I set up to do the drilling. According to my chart, 1/4 inch fine thread is 5.5mm drill. Sure everything turns. I thought I'd be alright with that small drill. Oh, no wonder it wobbled. And tighten the tailstock down. That's still wobbling. See, never take shortcuts because you're not short in the long run. Centre drill. The miraculous centre drill. Right. There we go. I think I might lash out and buy myself a new chuck as well for this lathe, which wasn't a particularly expensive one. be quite far enough in for that. Just to show you, same method as before, tap in there with the centre to keep everything straight. So I'll tap this now and then we'll cut it off and face it. Now we've got it tapped, got it turned round. We'll just face it off. Lathe and the power crossfeed would be nice as well. But I'm not doing huge things, so this is quite sufficient. Slow feed, get a nice finish. Break the edge. And there we have it. What I did do while it was in here was I just filed a little curve on that to go onto the cross piece. So I'll run the tap through it again to clean this end up, and then we'll go and fit it. And lastly, let's screw it on here. There it goes. Not too shabby. Not too shabby at all. Right, lunchtime. So the reason we've got this 1/8 inch thick piece welded on here and not just a pedal is because we're going to make a pedal out of some 3/8 stainless steel rod. And I've already made one bend. I started bending it before I realised I shouldn't be doing this. Anyway, it's going to go around like that. Then we're going to have a little piece of stainless steel flat here and the pedal put on it. So we've got one bend in. It wants to be slightly longer, so I'm going to put a little bend in there just to bring this out here. I put just a little bend in that to help it clear that. And what I've decided, actually measured it, is I want it about 6 inches out from here. That way it's not too far out and from just being under the ball of your foot, but it's I'm attempting to get as much leverage here as I can. So that's going to go about like that. So we'll cut that off there. Now I'm going to take this out to weld it because it may be completely unfounded paranoia, but I never like to do any kind of electric welding where I've got electronic ignition. So I don't know if it would affect the PVL or whatever, but just to be on the safe side, I'm going to take this off and we'll weld it over on the welding bench. So what I'm going to do here also then, just so as I know, we can mark that like that. So I have corresponding marks there and there, and I'll know when that's in the right position. So let's go and weld. And I'll just put a little tack on it to just see if we're in the right place. And that's just nice, it's missing the case. Ba-bum, ba-bum. So I'll go ahead and weld that piece on, then we'll see about doing the other couple of bits. I've got this piece welded on now, still a little bit warm. The next thing we're going to do is bend another piece which is going to go from there up here, the same sort of curve. I hope you're going to like this. I think it's going to look rather smart and just so much different. We're not going to put it right to the bottom like that because we're making the actual pedal out of this, some of this. And I want that to come around in a pedal like that. And if I put this right at the bottom, then this strip, when it comes around, will only just touch at the bottom of the strip onto this cross piece. So I'm going to lift this cross piece up a little bit so that it's nicely in the middle of the strip. So when that comes round, instead of it being just like that as it would be, I'm going to have it here, and I'll cut a little notch in and it'll make a nice joint. So the next thing I'm going to do is cut a piece of this and try and match that bend for it to come up here like that, just round this side here. So let's do that. There we have our next bend, and that, you see, is going to go just like that. So what I'm going to do is put a little easel into there to sort of notch that, for that to go like that, and the same at that end, so it'll go just there. What do you think? I think it looks smart, but then I've got weird tastes. Alright, let me mark this and cut it. Next stage, I've cut this to size, put a little notch in and chamfered the ends. Had to take a little piece off the back there for where this weld is. So that is now going to be put in there like that and welded in. There we are, all welded in. So the next thing we need is a little pedal. Let's say we've cut a piece out. That's going to go on there like that, and I've put it with a little bit of a slant so that we have some help if we run into something. It'll just slide off a little bit rather than just a flat face. That's going to go on there. Then we'll put some serrations on and one brake pedal. And the last thing to do on the pedal, now that we've got that welded on there, is to put some nice little serrations on so your feet don't slip off. You know, people here won't believe me when I tell them about the sort of footrests we used to have, you know, just pieces of flat steel with the end corner, the end turned up so your feet didn't slip off. I even remember having one bike which had, I don't know, about 1/2-inch bolts with just the bolt head to stop your feet slipping off. So anyway, what we're going to do is just use one of these cut-off wheels. You know what? This stainless steel is so hard. I'm going to use the bigger cutter. But you see what I'm doing here. You just put cuts in about 1/8 of an inch apart, and they form some nice serrations. They'll stop your feet sliding off. So let me do that, and then we'll slap it in, and you'll see what it looks like. And there is the completed arty-farty brake pedal. I actually think it looks quite good, and it is very rigid. The design makes it very rigid, and I'll zoom you in to see how I've put the stop for it. You can see here that one of the case screws is longer with a piece in it, so there it is. Now let me take you around the other side and show you that it actually works. Then you can see it all connected up on this side. I'll go and work the pedal. And there we are. Brake pedal finished.